Hello, hello, and welcome to my latest video in my human design video and discussion series called The Peripheral Perspective. While this video is, it's geared towards everyone, I think that it'll likely be most valuable to those of you who have already been experimenting with your design for some time, because it's really a bit of a nuance that I'd like to get into today. You can see that I have called this video Your Authentic Authority, or the Mind in Disguise. And there's this hooded figure with an image of a totally blank body graph where the head should be. So this is a very kind of like metaphorical image to illustrate what we're going to be talking about today. For those of you totally new to my channel who have yet to ever discover me, my name is Melanie Halpert. I'm a 5-1 quad right splenic projector on the left angle cross of wishes. And in addition to being a certified living your design guide and human design analyst in training, it's been more than 2 decades now that I have been working in the field of holistic health. And I have been practicing body talk, doing a lot of healing work since 2008. And I really love combining human design with my healing work, something that I might do an eventual video about how human design has actually really served my healing practice in beautiful ways, just in terms of how much more customized my approach can be in addressing my clients as the unique individuals that they are. So some of you already know that these videos have been a complete experiment for me. As a quad right, I have a very different way of conceptualizing, putting dots together, and the best is always when things are just pulled out of me. I have a very existential design. I'm not here to strategize. I'm not here to plan. So this has been a huge experiment in just putting together visually stimulating images that even without a live audience, things are just pulled out of me spontaneously, seeing where things go with whatever topic has felt correct to talk about. So knowing that my inspiration is something that will always be inconsistent, it's been nice to not have the pressure of having to produce content and really allowing for a very organic process and trusting that whoever is meant to stop by, whoever is meant to watch these videos, there's nothing that's going to stop that. So welcome again to all of you who are here watching, whether you are a subscriber, just kind of stumbled upon this, one of my friends even who's just wanting to see what I've been up to. Let's see what we're gonna talk about today. So I did start here with a quote from Ra Uru Hu, the original messenger of what is the human design system. And so Ra said, if a decision is made from the mind, it is a distorted decision, no matter how far down the path of deconditioning a person might be. The magic of the knowledge of human design is rooted in only one thing, decision-making. Everything about being correct is about making correct decisions. If you make decisions with your mind, you are simply making a conditioned, not self decision. So those of you who are already familiar with human design, you know that this is the whole premise of everything. It is all about correct decision-making, one decision at a time, and making correct decisions as yourself. Our whole lives, anybody who is of any age who has not been raised according to their design has just, by the very nature of life, been making decisions from places other than the place that we are actually designed to trust, either inside of ourselves or by our own personal process of authority. So today's topic it's actually about noticing specific ways that the mind can be an imposter, trying to mimic your actual authority in ways that blend in more easily and can fly under the radar. So for any of you who have been experimenting for some time, you know that there are some ways that the mind is more obvious. You get to see just things, you know, things that happen that are very, it's kind of like about, you know, like one of these, they talk about like no, I wouldn't say the devil, you know, it's more like sometimes the bad guy is obvious, but it's when the bad guy is kind of camouflaged, a wolf in sheep's clothing, that it becomes a lot harder to discern. So as you experiment with your design, I mean, in my experience anyways, I can say that there have been some things that the mind tries that are now very obvious to me. But there are some things that have been really, really insidious. And I find that the most insidious are the things that have really tried to mimic my authority. So today, when we go further in the presentation, I will actually use my design as an example. There might be some of you who really, really resonate with it and can look at your own design, you can think about your own experiences, and you'll be able to see. And maybe some of you will resonate less, and that's okay. This is just something in my own process that has been huge, that continues to be huge, and that actually really pays off when I am able to discern the distinct frequency of my authentic authority, as opposed to the ways in which there can be almost like a counterfeit authority that tries to hijack my decision-making process. I've used this slide in different ways, in different presentations, but it's a staple because it is, according to my own process, it's like the cornerstone of everything, regardless of anything else, is really being aware of what it is that you can trust to make healthy decisions as yourself. So are you already aware of what it is that you can trust? Aware that it's not a one size fits all. And we're certainly living in a day and age where there's like a lot going on in spiritual communities, new age communities, where it's all about following your heart or following your gut or developing your intuition. But the thing is that not everybody is here to make intuitive based decisions. Not everybody is to follow their gut. And not everybody is here to follow their heart. We all have different ways of being able to make reliable decisions. And even those of us who have the same type of authority, depending on the way your design is configured, it's going to have a different, I don't want to use the word signature because signature is used differently in human design, but it really has a very specific frequency that only you can learn to detect. So like I said, sometimes there are things that are going to be so obvious to you that you'll be able to catch it in its tracks and, decide differently. And there's going to be other times where it can really fly under the radar. So authentic authority or not. So one of the things that I've been contemplating a lot as a Living Your Design guide, as an analyst in training, is kind of like the various pressures that are exerted upon us from without, but also sometimes from within, depending on our design, depending on what our actual definition is. So any of you who have dabbled a bit in human design, know your way around a body graph, know that there are two kind of distinct pressure centers. So we've got the root center here, which is all about physical pressure on a biological level linked to the adrenals. And this is kind of what is perceived as stress, physical stress. And then we have up here at the head center, mental pressure, the pressure of inspiration. So this is a center that's very much about inspiration, also confusion. And ultimately, the pressure in the body graph, all pressure is either being driven down towards the throat or being driven upwards towards the throat. The throat is kind of like the town square. All roads lead to Rome. This is where all of the energy in the body graph wants to get to, because this is not only the center for communication, but also manifestation, kind of bringing things into form. That being said, even though the other centers are not technically pressure centers, when you're in somebody else's aura, when you are even the transits or whatever, whatever you are interfacing with in your environment or cosmically, these put various pressures on your design, even though it might not be linked to an actual pressure center. So these are just kind of some things that I have put on as labels. You won't see this in any of the, I guess, like formal imagery, but just how we can even look at what are the awareness centers, and how, starting with the splenic center, which is the most ancient awareness center, which is all rooted in survival. In many ways, somebody who has openness in this area of the body graph will on some level be under pressure to fear, under pressure to survive, under pressure to be spontaneous. Those are some of the things that are linked to openness there. So we've got that. With the Ajna center, this center, when there's openness here, in many ways, there is a pressure to defend one's mental certainty about something. So technically, they always say, proving one is mentally certain. But yeah, there is a lot of mental defenseness that can arise from openness in the center. So there is a certain pressure to defend what one knows, what one understands, what one has made sense of. And we've got the solar plexus. So again, a motor center, but also an emerging awareness center. Those of us who are open, undefined, there is a certain pressure to feel. And there's also a certain pressure to avoid confrontation, avoid truth. And then we have the undefined heart center, or the open heart center, which is also the ego or the will. So here there is an enormous pressure that 65% of the population is under to prove oneself. The undefined or open G center, which is our center for identity, love, direction, lots of pressure here to be. So, to find one's identity, to be something, to find love, to find oneself, to orient oneself. That is the kind of pressure that the undefined or open G can be under. And then the undefined or open throat, a lot of pressure to speak or to act. So this is just to illustrate how, although we might not be working with a traditional or official pressure center, that each and every one of the undefined or open centers are under various pressures that are exerted upon us, and can definitely influence our decision-making process. So what I wanted to point out too is how some of these can really fly under the radar, like a kid with a good fake ID. Now, okay, this is where I'm bringing my design in. There's a lot of stuff going on in this slide, but we are all here in some way or another to be these sleuths in our own process. Obviously, for me as a projector, it is my gift is to help others, especially the generators and the manifesting generators, to be able to really know themselves and to manage their energy effectively. It is not as helpful for me to focus inward on my own design, but along my process I have, and at least this is something that I'm able to really kind of put together here and show you the ways in which there can be this really insidious mental narrative that is trying to mimic what is your authentic authority. How one's superpower can actually become one's demise without even being aware of it. So, as you can see, we have an example here of splenic authority. This is my design. And splenic authority, as I'm sure many of you know, is designed to be spontaneous. Splenic authority is moment by moment. It's intuitive, it's instinctive, it has taste. There's different ways in which it can operate, but it's this immediate intuitive hunch that is always linked to what is healthy or not. It really is all rooted in survival, this deep kind of like knowing of the form as to what is healthy or not moment by moment. And as you could see, my authority defining channel here is red, which means it's unconscious. So this is not even something that my mind has access to. This is about deep, deep, deep trust in the body, and that moment by moment, my body knows exactly what is healthy for me or not. Splenic authority is very quiet, and it could easily be drowned out by other things. So what I really wanted to point out here, okay, what I really wanted to point out, and for you, you might have a different type of authority, so it might kind of appear in a different way for you. But for me, this is something that I have really noticed, and it's been monumental in my experiment. So although I'm a projector, and although I am not designed to initiate, having splenic authority means that I have the ability to be spontaneous. But that being said, I'm really learning that it is not about gratuitous speed or swiftness, and that not needing to wait. So for example, somebody who has emotional authority, who needs to wait out their emotional wave until they have clarity. Or, I mean, there are many other authorities that require time, whether you're a mental projector, whether you are a reflector. And, you know, those are just a couple of examples, but not needing to wait doesn't always mean now was so revolutionary for me, because as I mentioned, the mind, as much as it can be obvious at times, can also be very sneaky. And I've noticed that there are things that the mind has actually tried to covertly disguise or justify as splenic. So this is already when I knew what my authority was. I knew what it was that I could trust inside of me. This is Melanie after already entering into her experiment. So there were certain things that it's like, you know, sometimes when you encounter your design and you're like, oh yeah, and it really resonates with you. Well, there were a lot of things that resonated with me that I didn't actually realize was not self. I was thinking that, I'm like, yeah, I'm super aligned to my authority. But no, really, I was still operating from the not self. So depending on where you are in your journey, you understand how each of the undefined or open centers has its own narrative. For example, you know, some of the things we were talking about in the other slide, where the heart center, for example, will always be trying to prove itself, and the undefined or open solar plexus. One of the things too that I forgot to mention, which is really huge for me, is pressure to be nice. So I didn't mention that. A lot of pressure to be nice, pressure to not rock the boat. That's really huge. And so the undefined root center is always being in a hurry to get rid of the pressure. The undefined sacral center is not knowing when enough is enough. Undefined ajna, trying to prove one's mental certainty. Undefined head center, running around trying to answer everybody else's questions. Like, those are just kind of some of the, you know, like official ways that the not self narrative is defined. by the International Human Design School, by Ra. But the thing is, okay, as you go deeper into human design, and I'm just saying right now, this is not I am not a differentiation degree specialist. I'm not a rave psychologist, but ever since the beginning, I've been really, really fascinated as to almost like the exact scripting, like what goes on, what goes on inside the mind. And there are a lot of places in the design that actually are the things that make up literally word for word the types of things that go on that get you to act upon things, that get you to make decisions that are not at all aligned with your inner authority. So I kind of put together a little paragraph here, you can see in the thought bubble. And a lot of that is really rooted in, not in all of them, I just kind of put something quick together here, but where those little warning signs are. So in your design, especially anywhere where there is an undefined or open center, where there's a gate pointing at that center, I mean, these are huge. And it's just something that is so fascinating to explore because it literally gives you a script. So Melanie, not self Melanie, will definitely be inclined to think that the only way that she could be empowered is to act quickly, to reply to people's inquiries, to commit to things now, because if she doesn't attend to another person's needs ASAP, she will seem lazy, incompetent, uncaring, disloyal, and unreliable. Everyone will see that she doesn't have herself together. So as you could see, the way that I put it together here, so much of it, yes, obviously the undefined root center is all about getting things done quickly to relieve the pressure. And that's one of the big things that can be confused as being splenic. But there are so many other reasons why the mind will come up with this needing to act quickly, and how easy it is as a splenic being to justify acting on things quickly. But what I've discovered is that, like a toddler who does not want to go somewhere, no matter how much the parent will try to drag that child across the floor when it just plops itself down, when my splenic authority is not on board with something, the body does not move. The mind will move a million miles an hour, telling me all of the reasons why it has to get done ASAP, and justifying that I can because I am a splenic being and I can be spontaneous. But what is becoming more and more and more obvious, that is not about, it's like now always makes itself clear when the time is right. The mind does not know that. The mind does not know that. And so as a splenic being, I find that the mind is often putting me under pressure to act now and trying to justify it as my splenic authority. So I'm really hoping that this has kind of tried to illustrate my point, and illustrating my point beyond just looking at how, not knowing when enough is enough or trying to prove. I mean, all of that stuff is woven in here, but it's almost even more detailed and all revolving around, well, this is why I did it spontaneously. I did it spontaneously because I'm designed to be spontaneous. Being designed to be spontaneous does not mean it needs to be done now. So this is something that, for example, somebody who is who has emotional authority and has an undefined splenic center, this is like drilled into them pretty much from the get-go. But even, for example, somebody who has a defined solar plexus, but also a defined spleen, and how, yes, on one level, there is a certain amount of kind of information or consistency that is intuitive or instinctive or tasteful, that splenic hit, but at the same time is still needed for emotional clarity. So whatever your authority, I know that there are certain sacral beings, and this has been so fascinating to watch as well, where all of a sudden a generator or a manifesting generator has said to me, for the longest time, I thought that that was my sacral response. I really thought that was my sacral voice, but it wasn't. It was my mind saying, yes, we're available for this. So, just kind of an invitation to observe your authority, your inner authority, your process of authority, and how it is really supposed to work versus how the mind can distort that to its own agenda. Because this is really the insidious thing of the experiment. It's not so much the obvious things, it's the things that are less obvious that can keep on undermining us. And it's only when we start seeing them that that stuff really starts to shift. And so when we ask ourselves, well, but how do you know? How do you know? How do you know? It's always going to come back down to the same thing. And this is a slide that I actually had in my last presentation about getting messy in our human design experiment, where I was talking about resistance being like the snap of an elastic band. So you see my hand here with a little elastic around the wrist. And when you actually make a correct decision as yourself, for the most part, there won't be any snap. So whatever your signature is, if you are a manifester, there will be that peace, there will be that freedom of movement. If you're a generator, manifesting generator, satisfaction. If you're a projector, success, ease. And if you're a reflector, then that awe, that surprise. So when there's a twinge or when there's a sting or when it's like really intense, well, you're gonna be face to face with your signpost. So as a manifester, that anger that arises, generator or manifesting generator, that frustration, projector, that bitterness, reflector, that disappointment. So it's not, there's a spectrum, and this is why not only getting to learn the distinct frequency of your authentic authority, but also getting to know the distinct frequency of your signpost. So I have another video about that that's called Signposts of Resistance, Greatest Ally, I think that's what it's called. Because the more that you have that sensitivity threshold is attuned. So both at the level of being attuned to the frequency of your authentic authority, and also being attuned to the frequency of your signpost of resistance, that is really going to show you what you need to know to course correct. I mean, it is everything. Our signposts of resistance are truly our greatest asset, because that is the only thing. And it is something that no matter what is going on outside of us with anybody else, when we are rooted in who we are and we are aware of this, that has the power to shift everything. So my question to you, as we kind of wind this down, is, in your own experiment, have you discovered ways in which the mind can suavely trick you into thinking you're making an authority-based decision? And have you discovered something cognitively tangible, like an unmistakable characteristic or watermark, that has helped you distinguish between authentic and counterfeit authority? So as I was creating this slideshow, I kind of had an image of like a banknote, a dollar bill or something, and how, whatever government is putting out that currency finds ways to create things within that physical piece of paper that hopefully will make it, you can't copy it, or that somebody will be able to hold it up to the light and kind of see it, and they're going to know a real from a fake. So have you discovered something that is really tangible about your own authority, that even if the mind tries to mimic it, that you can know, okay, this is the real deal or not? So, this is the whole point of these videos. I am definitely not a be-all, end-all expert about human design. I'm only 4 years into my experiment. I keep on getting, hit with like layers of shattering as things just continue to shift. And it's very humbling, like a very, very humbling experience. So in making these slideshows, it's really just to kind of, bring stuff to the table that I've been contemplating in my own process, hoping that it will be of value to whoever it is that comes along for the journey. So hopefully this will be of value to you. And in the meantime, thank you so much if you made it this far. Have you already had a personal reading? If not, would you like to learn about your design? Or have you been experimenting for some time and are now ready to dive deeper? If so, do you enjoy discussing fine lines and dilemmas that can exist between your definition and your openness? Has it been challenging to find balance between living your design authentically while interfacing with others who might be on a different path? Would you like to find new ways of grounding theory into practice by way of interactive, catalytic exploration of your unique design? So some people have been asking me if I do readings. I do, but my favorite thing for readings is to really kind of do that more for people who are completely new to human design. And as I am not yet a certified analyst, they are not considered to be foundation readings. So I do personal chart overviews in my own heretical style via Zoom, of course, honoring the original teachings of human design. And for anybody else who has already had a reading or who has been learning about human design, maybe in self-study, I love doing coaching by design where we can take a more informal approach, really dive in, work with whatever it is that you're dealing with in your life, and just like tinker around and go with the flow, go with whatever is pertinent for you in the moment, whatever it is that's intriguing to you, and really help to deepen your own process, your own experiment. So I can be reached directly by email at info@melaniehalpert.com if you'd like more information, or if you're looking to book a session. My website right now is kind of in transition. But I trust that there will be more developments there as inspiration hits and the timing is right. So until next time, everyone, thank you so much and take care.